Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio. Welcome back, everybody. I'm here today with Caroline Schley. She was born in New York City, holds a bachelor's degree from the University of Colorado at Boulder in environmental science, and a master's from NYU in education. She has traveled all over the world throughout her 20s, seeking adventure and employment and working in industries from event planning to outdoor education. She has feature writing in the Tahoe World, a whitewater rafting guide. Wow, that sounds like fun. And a political street canvasser, a public relations opinion before settling into a career as a high school science teacher. That's a lot of wandering around just to do high school science. In 2018, at 35, she has decided to take a sabbatical to work on full-time on writing a novel. She is currently querying her first contemporary young adult manuscript. Caroline, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here.
Yeah, a well-rounded life, you know?
Thank you.
I like the science part. Having been involved in the sciences myself, that's some pretty cool stuff, you know? So anyway, so you're on sabbatical, and
yes.
In your querying your young adult manuscript. So I'm gonna start with what is the young adult manuscript about?
So my manuscript is contemporary, and it's sort of a coming of age story. The protagonist is a girl from the wrong side of the tracks in Bridgeport, Connecticut, that gets a scholarship to a fancy Connecticut prep school for her sophomore year. Mm-hmm. And the story focuses around her ability to fit in with this new crowd of people, and whether or not she's able to take ownership and authority over the decisions that she makes in her life. She faces social problems with her peers, teenage problems with boys, and a lot of questions about her identity that center around her relationship with her mother and not knowing who her birth father is. So the reader goes on this journey with her through her year of school, and by the end, her family and social issues all get resolved.
Wow. That sounds like a whirlwind of a story. Wow.
It is, and I love the young adult genre because all of the things that are happening in the young adult literature are sort of happening to the characters for the first time. So, like, it's the first time you have a crush, it's your first kiss, it's your first time falling in love, it's your first big fight with your mom, it's your first day of your sophomore year of high school, and I think that readers can really relate to the excitement of all of those firsts, and it really keeps the plot moving. So it's been really fun to write. And after teaching high school for almost 10 years, it was really fun to reflect on all of my experiences in teaching to, like, reach into this story.
Yeah, I mean, your life has been an adventure, and now you're writing the manuscript. It looks like it's going to be that adventure of first for that person, and that's going to be fun. So
yeah.
So I guess, why did you have to take a sabbatical to be able to do all this for the book?
So I think I've been lucky in my teaching career. Right now, I'm at an international school in Madrid, Spain, where I've been for 4 years, and I'm a member of the Spanish Teaching Union. So I had the ability to take a sabbatical year to focus on my writing work. And I think that anyone that's been involved significantly in a big writing project could probably sympathize with the idea that it's sort of like engulfs your mind. And in my experience, teaching also sort of engulfs your mind. And I spent about 2 years trying to work nights and weekends on this manuscript and get it to figure out if I was serious enough to really take a year off and keep doing it or not. And after those 2 years, I really felt like I needed to have some time to just really focus and dive into this storyline. And I was lucky to be in a position where I was able to do it, so I figured, why not?
Right. Yeah. Because honestly, there's so many people out there that just wouldn't be brave enough to even try it. And that's what makes part of this so inspiring, that you did take that brave step, you know. So
thank you. So, yeah, and it was. I mean, it's a really hard decision because I'm relatively young. You know, I was very engaged in very interesting and promising stage of my career, but I really felt like I was starting to lose. I think it's important to have like a really serious passion for whatever you're dedicating yourself to as your life's work. And I was starting to feel like I was just putting in the hours teaching more than I was like letting it be my life's passion. And I felt like I wanted to honor the idea that my passion was moving to writing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know what? When you're molding young minds, being passionate about molding those minds, it kind of becomes important, right?
Yeah, and in teaching, I think you see people that have all different opinions about that. Like some people really do just see it as a job, and like they sort of do it during the day and go home at the end of the day, and that's it. But I think much more often, teachers are very, very emotionally invested in what they're doing in their classrooms. And it's for that reason, I think it's a really rewarding career, but it's also, you know, it's tiring. And for me, I think it was important to recognize that and take a break.
Mm-hmm. There's that burnout syndrome, right? And we need to avoid that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, was there some specific steps or something that you took to leading to taking that sabbatical, so that like maybe if you want to go back to teaching, you can go back to teaching because you did it the right way?
Yeah, so I think for me, the idea of taking a sabbatical was it was something that was in my mind for a long time before I did anything to act on it. And the first thing that I did to act on it was just talk to some other people that had been through the process of taking time off of work. And in teaching, it might be a little bit more common than in some other career paths because it's sort of easy to take a calendar year off of work and then slip back into a school at the beginning of the next school year. Mm-hmm. And it's not like such a strange gap as it might be in some other types of employment. But to talk to some people just about the experiences that they had trying to do that, and then the response to that when they tried to get back in the workforce. And I think something that I heard again and again and again was how positively a sabbatical is viewed when you're going back into job interviews. And that is like a significant, I think that that's true across the board, and is like a significant lesson in all of this for me, was people, when they see a gap on your resume, don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. They're curious about what you did and what you learned, and enough people told me that I really like started to listen to it.
Right. Yeah. I guess it depends on again where the gap is, how the gap was planned out, and everything. Because I've heard some responses where that gap was viewed as, oh my God, you took time off from work, oh my God, sort of thing, and you expect me to hire you? Oh.
Right.
Yeah. So,
right, and that's where, I mean, I wonder if in other professions it's used differently.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess it varies from profession to profession, and it also employer to employer too. So, but I don't think it's that uncommon for teachers to take that time off, though.
Yeah. You don't think it's common, or you do think it's common?
I don't think it's. I think it's pretty common for teachers to take it off. Let me rephrase that. So.
Yeah. I would agree with that. And I mean, at some schools, you're like encouraged to do that. Mm-hmm. And after you've worked at a school a certain number of years, you're sort of guaranteed some sabbatical time, because it is such a consuming profession, and they want you to have time to be able to do research or pursue other passions in your life and feel like you sort of have a well-rounded life-work balance.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you decided you're going to take this sabbatical, and now you have a manuscript that you're trying to push out to agents and get marketed and published. Was that part of your planning of the sabbatical, or is that something that just kind of happened along the way? How do we wind up from teaching science to writing a novel about a first contemporary young adult novel?
So it was definitely part of the plan. And I think that that's like an overall lesson in thinking about taking a sabbatical in any profession. I do think it's important to have a vision for what you're going to do with your time off, because if you don't have that, I think it's easy for that time to sort of melt away, mm-hmm. and you don't have anything to show for those months of your life. But for me, I had been working on this manuscript for really a couple of years, and knew that if I took a year, I could sort of have the final push to get it done, and then start the process of trying to get it out in the world, which is quite a process. Like in writing, they say when you write a book, you need to be really good at two things, and writing is just one of them. And the other is this querying process and marketing yourself and meeting people and making connections in the publishing world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'd say that's probably very true, because anybody can write a manuscript, but not very many people are going to get it published or really get it pushed out there. Do you have any specific goals around the novel? How big of an audience you want for the book? Anything like that?
So, I mean, in terms of how big of an audience, the sky is the limit. I think I would love to see as many people as possible read this. But the sort of journey to getting there could look a couple of different ways. And publishing now, from my perspective, it seems like there's two roads. The first is traditional publication, and the second is self-publication. Mm-hmm. And I think that most people that put in the time to really work on and polish a full-length manuscript at least take a stab at traditional publication. and reach out to some agents, if nothing else, because the more people that you talk to the project about, the better the project is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then people seem to veer into self-publishing, sometimes because that's what they prefer, and they like to have the control over all the aspects of the writing, and sometimes because it's just like where the journey takes them. But I do think in self-publishing, the thing that makes me shy away from it, that not a lot of people acknowledge, is it's actually a tremendous amount of work to self-publish a book. Because all of the things that the publishing house would be able to do for you, like the cover art and dealing with the ISBN number and the Library of Congress and the copyright and the typeface. I mean, you have to know how to do all of that yourself.
Right.
So I'm sticking with reaching out to traditional publishers for now, and then I'll see where the journey takes me.
Yeah. You bring up a good point, because readers can tell the difference between the layout of a self-published book versus one that was traditionally published. It just in how things kind of all come together, right? Into that package that they're holding in their hand, So
yeah,
there's a lot of things to learn to self-publishing, where maybe if you went the other way, it's kind of done for you,
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
definitely.
Okay, so because there's a lot of people out there, especially when you're talking about an audience full of entrepreneurs and readers, what does it cost to actually find that agent and get the book published? Is it what are some of the costs around that?
So, I mean, really, there don't have to be any costs associated with it. You can find information on agents on the website for literary agencies and just reach out to them over email. And you can work on your manuscript yourself and self-edit and just send out queries to people.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say what I have decided to invest some financial capital into is an editing service. And there are a lot of people that will do freelance book editing for manuscripts. I've always worked with Gotham Writers Workshop. They're based in New York City, and I just think they have a really good editorial team, and they've always been able to match me up with an editor that is interested in my project and sort of understands my vision and my voice, and people there have always worked really well for me. Mm-hmm. And I've also invested some money into going to some writing conferences. And I would say if you do have some money to put towards your vision for your writing project, those are things that I would recommend. But those are probably the first two things that I would recommend just using money for.
Okay. Are there any other really important resources that people should look for when going this way?
I think for me, it was really helpful to check out some of the craft books on just how to structure a novel. And I mean, there's everything from Idiot's Guide to, Stephen King wrote a great book about how he structures out his novels. I also think that you can look up online writing classes or online writing communities that you can be a part of, even getting together some friends that you know that like to write and forming a critique group just to have deadlines that keep you on sort of a schedule. All of that is really helpful.
Yeah. So, okay. I have my book. I'm actually going to, towards the end of this, I'm probably going to really talk about the actual writing process, because I think probably the marketing process and getting the book out there is probably, in some respects, probably more important than the writing parts at times. So your query process to the agents, has that been a smooth ride, or you getting the lumps and bumps of it too? So
in querying, I think the hardest thing for people about the querying process is just like the volume of rejection that you encounter. Because, like in my case, I wrote this manuscript that I thought was very polished. I'm very proud of it. And you think that the very first person you show it to is going to be like, oh yeah, this is like the next great American novel. Like, where do we all sign up to represent this and read it? And that's just not, I mean, I think that does happen to some people, but that is not what is happening to me. And you need to have a really thick skin. And for me, like I'm a planner, and it's been really important to have a really regimented plan about how I'm reaching out to literary agencies. And so I, like about once a month, for the last 3 months, will send out between 10 and 15 queries. And if I hear back at all from half of those people, that's like a very high response rate. And that's just sort of how it goes in the literary world.
Yeah. So thicken up the skin and be prepared.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are definitely good takeaway lessons. And I mean, I also think that like when you talk about being on a sabbatical and then going back into the traditional workforce, like those are certainly things that when I go back into teaching, I would be happy to talk about in a job interview. Like how those skills are very transferable, I think.
Yeah. I would say that the whole process, there's going to be a lot of transfer, because whenever you have experience, people like to hear that you have that experience, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's actually like dive into some of the writing parts, and because we usually write. Is it true that we usually write from the point of what we know?
I mean, I think that is true in like a general sense for writing. That's definitely where people start. But for me, the most interesting aspects of this writing project, which is sort of like bigger than anything else I've ever done, has been writing outside of what I'm familiar with and really doing some significant research to be able to write convincing fiction with characters, that have interests that are different than mine.
Okay. So, with that being said, have you gone through like some of your all-time favorite books? Is there like a list of all-time favorite books that you have that you maybe put in like style-wise or story-wise or something?
Yeah, I think when you're writing, it's super important to read a lot, and especially to read in the genre that you're working in, just to get inspiration and sort of get a sense of what's out there already. And I have, it's always tempting as a pretty avid reader to say, like, whatever you're reading lately is some of your favorite books. And I think that's true to some extent, but in terms of my all-time favorite writers, I would say John Steinbeck is up there for fiction, like sort of the traditional adult fiction canon. And then I also really like to read non-fiction adventure writing. So, I really like John Krakauer. I really like Tommy Caldwell's book. And then in my genre, I really like contemporary writers like Curtis Sittenfeld, who wrote that book Craft a long time ago. That sort of speaks to, the contemporary boarding school experience in a really beautiful way. Adam Silvera writes great contemporary young adult fiction. Sharon Biggs-Waller wrote a great book recently called Girls on the Verge. Amy Reed wrote a book called Nowhere Girls. I love everything Meg Medina writes. So I think the important thing is to just, be reading all the time. I mean, and that was one of my goals on my sabbatical. I read, at least a book a week. That's a pretty slow week if I just read one book.
Wow. So, okay. That's kind of mind blowing to me because if you're reading that much, how do you balance that back with how much you're going to write?
So for me, what works best for writing, and I think that this is very individualized for different people, but I like to set daily word counts for writing. And really the way that I do that, like in a bigger picture, is I set a weekly word count, and then if I don't hit a word count one day because life gets in the way, like it's sort of all right because I know I can make it up by the end of the week. Mm-hmm. But so I set a weekly word count, and then I write in the mornings. So, like, I will sort of get up. I usually like to go for a run and clear my head, have some coffee, and then I write, and usually really try to write until my word count is done. And then if I write more than that, it's great, but I feel like I don't feel stressed to do any more than that. I don't feel like I have to do any more than that. Mm-hmm. And then I can spend the afternoon sort of researching or thinking about agents that I want to query or reading. I mean, I spend probably 3 hours every day just reading, at least.
Yeah. So I mean, it's been a great year. I've been doing, like, focusing on doing things that I really love all year. Yeah. Well, what are some of the other things that you really love to do that help keep things balanced out so that you keep moving forward with your novel, but you don't like feel like you hit that wall and it's like, oh my God, sort of thing?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I do, especially like when you're involved in a really individual pursuit that can be really frustrating and like feel really like failure heavy a lot. I think it's important to have other things that make you really happy that you focus on. So for me, that is definitely physical activity. I do a lot of running, and I like to have sort of like running projects that I'm training for. So like right now I'm training for the New York Marathon. And I also like to do a lot of mountaineering and big hiking projects. So like I just 2 days ago got done climbing Mount Katahdin in Maine. Over the winter I went down to Ecuador and did some really interesting mountaineering. In the fall I did some big camping trips and big hikes in Yosemite and on the West Coast. Mm-hmm. And to have those things sort of like lined up has been really helpful and has been really motivational. Because again, it's like that idea that you're building in a deadline for yourself. If you know that you have, like I knew in January I was going to be away from email and writing for 2 weeks and up in the mountains. So I had to get to a certain point with my writing, and then that's when I actually used my editorial service. And I sent it off, and then I felt like I had really accomplished something and was able to go enjoy something else.
Wow. So, with all that adventure and everything, is like, I think that the mountain in Maine that you're talking about, I climbed. So, yeah. But with all that going on, it's like I'm now curious about what goes on inside your head. How do you dream up the story is really what I'm getting at. How do you dream that up? How does it come from out of your head? How does it appear in your head and then out through your hand and onto the page?
That's a great question, and I think that's a really important one when you're writing. And for me, the most important thing was definitely to just get something down on paper. Like, and the story that I actually started with for this manuscript was totally different than the book that I have right now. Like, it was a different genre, it was a different main character, it was a totally different thing. But once I had written down about 40,000 words of that story, I was able to go over it and edit it, and I cut a lot of it out, and I sort of started over, but you need to get something down on paper. Something that people say a lot in writing, and I think it's like a great saying, is you can't edit a blank page. So like you need to just have, like, I call it like my vomit draft of my first idea for a chapter, just out on the paper. Like, you can't get too married to what you're thinking about because it could all totally change. But then once you have that, you can sort of read through it and see what works and what doesn't work, and make a better plan for like how it's going to be a cohesive story.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because honestly, I'm a genius at doing this podcast thing and all that kind of stuff. I am not a very good writer at all. So I was like, if I had the opportunity to like pick a real writer's brain about how I can maybe just write some stuff so that it looks better for me, right? So yeah, yeah. But so you when you say you get things down on a page, are you actually are you sitting in front of a laptop, or are you sitting with pad and paper? In
So for me, it always starts with a pen and paper, and this is actually like something I've talked about a lot in my teaching career as well. I think that they've done studies. And my understanding of it is it activates a very different part of your brain when you're like physically writing something down with a pen than it does when you're typing something out on a computer. And so for me, it's super important to start with writing something down with a pen, because I feel like it really allows me to think better. And then once I've gotten to a certain point with a pen and paper, I'll switch over to writing on a computer. And that's actually really freeing, because you type a lot faster than you handwrite things. So once I really know where a story's going and I can just start writing on a computer, I can write, a lot. Like it feels like I sit down and 5,000 words come out.
5,000 words. That's it's really cool, because and you say you do that in the morning after your run. And your cup of coffee, and do the words just flow, or sometimes is it a bit of a struggle to get that process going?
I feel it varies. Once you get to a certain point, I think in the story, for me, the words start to just flow. And I sort of so now, as I'm querying this first writing project, I'm working on another manuscript just to sort of have something else to do as a creative outlet. And I'm at the point now where I sort of know what I want to have happen next, and I can sketch out a scene or a chapter. And I feel like my thoughts run in sort of like 1,300 to 1,500 words first for a scene or a chapter, and then I'll go on to like the next scene or the next chapter and write a little bit of that. But at first, I think it's like a little bit slower than that, and that's when what I like to count towards my word counts as I'm beginning the writing process is writing out character profiles. And so it's like you're just getting to know these people that you're making up, and thinking about like what some of their interests or their oddities or their secrets it might be.
So that backstory can be important because it gives you more things to draw from?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's like it also can change a lot, but it just gives you like a jumping off point for how a character might talk, or how they might enter a room, or what kind of stores you might see them in, that can lead to like some interesting conflicts and scenes. And there are like some great sort of prompt exercises that, once you have some characters imagined, you can put them at a wedding. What are they doing if they're in someone else's wedding? Or what are they doing if they're at a birthday party? Or what are they doing if they're drunk? How do they act what kind of exercise do they like? So you can sort of imagine them doing all these different things that aren't necessarily things that you would really have in a finished book. But I think when you read a good book, you can envision that the character is like a whole person that knows how to do all these things.
Yeah. Well, okay, so as a reader, when I'm actually reading the book, right? And it's like this video starts going through my head as I'm reading it. It's like in my brain, I'm reading the words, but at the same time, it's like this video starts going off my head. I can actually start to picture and visualize like details that you're talking about on the page. It starts to appear in like this video thing in my head at the same time. And the reason why I asked that, I'm getting at is that, do you actually like see, like, can you like picture the whole entire room like a video or a photograph as you're writing it onto the page?
Yeah, I can, definitely. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that's like a universally true thing. And I think for a good book, I think that things are a little bit ambiguous, and every person that reads that book could picture it slightly differently, and that's okay. But I do, like, for me, I for sure have like a clear picture in my mind of what's happening.
Mm-hmm. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, because because you're also an artist, and being able to share what is going on in your mind and in your world, even if the world is being created, it's still your world, right? So being able to share that is really cool stuff. So, okay, since we're talking about your world and what's going on with it, is when you actually get the book published, and the book it's like you're selling like 10,000 copies a day. I'm hoping and praying for you.
Thanks. Me too. That'd be
it's like instant Stephen King level, or one of my favorite authors, Nora Roberts level, or something like that. Yeah, it just puts you instantly there. What is it is there like an ultimate message that you want people to get out of these books? I mean, obviously it's entertaining, but is there like an ultimate message?
That's a really good question. I don't know if I would say a message so much as like, for me, this is a coming of age story, and like I would definitely want a reader to walk away with some thoughts or like significant considerations, like what it means to come of age and like what it means to challenge yourself to do difficult things. Because I think at the end of the day, that's like what a coming of age story is. You're changing, you're evolving your persona. And I think that's part of the reason that young adult books have such a wide readership, is like anyone can relate to that message if it's presented correctly. Because I mean, who doesn't want to do that?
Yeah. Well, so what was coming of age like for you?
So for me, it was I went to like a Connecticut prep school, and I had great friends, and I had a really interesting high school experience. I started high school in New York City. I went to a boarding school program in Connecticut. I went to a farm semester program in Maine, and lived on a working farm for 6 months in high school. And I think the most important thing about my coming of age experience was I had really good and supportive friends. And that's definitely a theme in this novel as well. Yeah, and I mean, people that I'm still really close with to this day, because I think the friends that you make at that part of your life are like, they're pretty pivotal people usually.
Yeah,
and it's been interesting to check back in with them through the years, and sort of like as you go through different stages of what you're doing with yourself, and have them like relate it back to such a long time ago.
Yeah. I know it going back to some of the people that I met. I guess it's more than 30 years now. That going back and catching up with some of them, it's like it's kind of fun, It's like, hey, do you remember we said how close we said we would do this? How close are we to that? And that sort of thing, right?
So, yeah, and it's so interesting.
Mm-hmm. So, is your story is your coming of age story? You I think you did say at the beginning of this that there was a prep school involved or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that would be the kind of the common ground between you and them. Is there some point where you wrote you into the story?
Not really, honestly. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that it's just one of the sort of important questions that the protagonist faces is her ability to take ownership over the decisions that she makes in her life, and I do think that is like a relatively common, whatever you want to call it, sort of revelation point in adolescence, and I definitely went through that. But outside of that, no. Like it was inspired more by what I saw working as a teacher and what I see now in the news. Because I think that to write contemporary YA now, I mean, I grew up in the 90s, so like the world is a very different place than it was when I was growing up. Like we didn't have social media, I didn't have a cell phone.
Yeah. That is very true. I do remember explaining to kids that no, we didn't even have like computers in our school. I'm about 2 years older than you are. So. It's like,
yeah, I mean, I don't know how we did anything in school,
It's like no, calculators. No, we weren't allowed calculators. We had to figure it all out by hand. They're like, what? No tablet or anything like that. No. That's all you guys now. So as a teacher, you've heard some of your students talking about this or that, and you probably put some of those things into the book, also.
Yeah, and I mean, I think for me in teaching, like, I never got overly involved in my students' like social affairs, but I think just to see them interacting with each other in the classroom was always really like interesting and inspiring for me, and to see how ideas spark in kids that age is really interesting, and like how passionate they are about things. And those are definitely like the parts of my teaching that sort of carried through into this manuscript. Was just like the general inspiration of being in a room full of teenagers is like actually quite significant, because they're all so unique and interesting to talk to, and like have so many ideas about the world, and it's just such an interesting age.
Yeah. I'm going to actually say this is like, that's pretty cool because I do know some current teachers, and they don't actually put talking to the kids in quite an elegant manner as you just did. So you have some serious compassion towards your students.
Yeah, and I mean, I think to me that was like always been like just a really fascinating part of the working in education.
So anyway, back to the book and your process of getting the book out there, and since we're starting to run short on time, Do you have any best advice for up-and-coming authors?
Yes, so for me, I think the most important advice that I encountered along my writing journey was you need to expect to write about 4 times what you think your manuscript is going to be, and not be like intimidated or bummed out by that idea, because that's just how it goes. You know, like when you read these books, they've been combed through again and again, and things have been taken out and things have been added in, and just to embrace the idea that it's like a really long process, and you should enjoy it, and you should write every day, and don't be afraid of where the story's going, because you can always change things. So just enjoy the process and write a lot.
And I always ask everybody I interview this question, because if you've made it this far and you're on this show, you've probably already done some really cool stuff, or you're about to do some really cool stuff, and people are going to be looking at you. So, what would if you could have an effect on the world? What would the world look like if it were just Caroline's world? What would it look like so that it would be the perfect vision for you?
So for me, that would mean people, really at the base of it, people a lot more invested in environmental issues. And I think in terms of where we are in our planet's history right now, that is like the number one most important thing that people could be talking about or thinking about or taking action on. That would really like form the base of Caroline's world, would be people that were very mindful about the footprint that they were leaving on the planet, and like actively having conversations about that and considering it in their everyday decisions. And I think that stems from a place of compassion, and that's like a very important value for me. And I think that when you have compassion for the environment, that's not very far removed from having passion for the people that are around, compassion for the people that are around you. And that would, like, I think make the world a much nicer place. I think the world is nice where you see compassion in it.
I definitely agree with you on that one. And we do need to be put more into these environmental issues, and from the science point, we also need to learn more about what's going on with our planet. So I don't think there's enough of that going on either.
Yeah, I agree. And the problem is, like, people are all about, sort of like sexy news, and that's not the sexy news, that's like very depressing. It's like probably honestly like the most depressing things that you could talk about are the things that are happening with the planet right now. So to be able to like have a paradigm shift of focus onto that, and like having not sexy conversations about like the difficult changes that people need to make in their lives to understand the ecosystems of the planet, and then to like have a positive impact on them. Yeah, I think it would be a very different world.
Yeah. Okay, so to all those publishing and booking agents for your book, what is the best way for them to find you and discuss your manuscript?
All right. So I am on Twitter. I'm at Caroline Schley on Twitter. I have a blog called Rhymes with Fabulous, where I write a little bit about the process that I've been going through with the sabbatical and writing my manuscript and my querying. And you can find that at rhymeswithfabulous.com or through my website, which is carolineschley.com. I'm also on Instagram as C_Schley, but I'm not great at Instagram. Like that's, I get on there like every couple weeks because I feel like sort of like I have to in the world today, but it's like I'm not. I wouldn't say I have a very like interesting or special Instagram account.
I honestly I struggle with it. Instagram is like it helps boost the listeners and everything, but I really struggle with it. It's like
yeah,
I wish I could hire somebody to do it for me. Because your last name is spelled a little bit differently than what people might be looking for. Can you spell your last name for people?
Yes. So let's do the whole thing. Caroline, because people do get confused about this sometimes too, is Caroline, and Schley is German, and it is spelled Schley.
Okay. Thank you for joining us today. It's like it's been a lot of fun. So
yeah, thank you so much. This has been great.
Yeah. Okay, so hopefully we'll talk to you again after your book has like won lots of prizes and everything. Like is it
great.
Is it the quill or is it the quill? Is that the book prize? I think it's the quill.
What's that?
The book prize, isn't that the quill?
Oh, yeah, there might be one called the Quill.
Yeah, I think that's what it's called. Anyway, so you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again later.
All right, thank you so much.
Okay.
Have a great day.
Bye. This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.